Welcome on in, golf fans. Not sure what was going on out there with that intro music, but welcome on into our round 3 prop and betting live stream out there for the Mexico Open. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure tomorrow with any deep dives on bets that you guys want down there in chat. Look at the weather report, some of the averages out there from Friday, as well as how to attack the Underdog and Prize Picks boards with a few slips out there for moving days action. But hopefully Friday treated you guys nicely. Hopefully you're having some good time with your friends, maybe had some time while you're out earlier and are ready to talk some golf over there for tomorrow. I see we already have Pat Moore down there in chat. And yeah, we're going to go through some Underdog and some Prize Pick stuff, as well as those pin locations as well. So we'll have all of that covered for you, Pat, but you'll have to sit back for the next 15-20 minutes for all that information. But cheers to everyone out there. Got a little bit of blends in the cup, and it was a hectic day over here in South Florida. Ended up having a pipe burst out there in my apartment, and I've been dealing with that the entire day. A lot of my belongings that got flooded, but luckily was able to get some emergency crew people out here rather quickly. So other than the loud ass dehumidifiers that I have throughout my house, things are going swell. So sleeping tonight ought to be fun with all that noise, but cheers to everyone out there. So in terms of our averages out there from round 2, they played pretty spot in line with what we had for round 1, if not maybe a hair easier. Your birdie average went up ever so slightly. Your bogey average was pretty much the exact same between days 1 and 2, but you had a little bit less water balls out there today. And that was the real big difference when it came to these averages, is if you take a look at the bogey rate and even the double or worse rate, that's really where you saw a lot of that change. So your fairway average went up ever so slightly, about 0.12 out there per round. Your green average went down ever so slightly. So the averages that we thought would stay pretty consistent out there from day to day, that's pretty much what we got. And the one real change that we have heading into the weekend, weather we'll touch on here in a second, looks very similar to what we had in days 1 and 2, is going to be the cut line itself, because with a lower level field like what we have here, a lot of people that wouldn't necessarily always be playing out there in the PGA Tour, but some of the Mexican locals, also some of the Corn Ferry Tour guys that get into this strength of field, with the cut line getting some of those players out of here, you're going to see a general increase in talent level. So I think that would lead to a little bit of a better scoring average, higher birdie average, a little bit of a lower bogey average, that sort of thing, as well as a moving day setup. And you combine that with some early conditions that look favorable, because you had so many people go out there and make the cut. You do have threesomes off of both tees, and they're starting at about 9:30 local time, which means that for the first half of the field, the guys that are starting around 9:30, they're going to finish almost their entire rounds by the time the wind starts to kick up. Whereas maybe some of your later starters over there with the threesomes off of both tees aren't going off until closer to 11:30 local time, which means about an hour into their round, they're going to be dealing with slightly higher winds than the morning guys. So I wasn't sure how it was going to bake out earlier when we were over there on the Ship It Nation channel going through some of the showdown stuff, but it does look like the morning guys are going to have pretty nutted conditions combined with these moving day pin locations. And we're going to go hole by hole real quickly. I've actually already done so I have a pretty good taste for what these are going to give us. On the front 9, the pin locations look pretty tucked. I'd say especially holes like number 5 look hard. 6 is a par 5, but that is only 3 paces from the side. And then even holes like 9 are on top of a ridge. Hole 8 is tucked way over there on the left side. The front 9 looks like they're making it kind of tough. Now, you're still going to have birdies out there. 7 is still drivable despite being tucked way there in the back left. You have 6, which it's maybe not a drivable or reachable par 5, but you're still going to see a lot of birdies at a par 5 anyways. Back 9, though, is where you see more of those moving day pins, and especially ones like 12 that are a par 5 that is up there in the front. Hole 13's by far the easiest pin that you have there. Even holes like 14, 15, 17 especially, that's the easiest pin by far that you get at that sort of hole. You combine this back 9 setup along with the fact that they might move up some tee boxes to add some extra scoring out there, and I think that the averages are only going to get better. So the scoring average might be closer to 2 under par. I'd say the birdie average is going to be at least 4.65 per round. And this bogey average, I would say, would be at most about 2.75 per round. Now, there's obviously some leeway out there with those stats, but in general, I would expect to see a little bit of an easier golf course. And I know we didn't go hole by hole. I guess we're going to skip that this time around just because I kind of know what to expect. But if you take a look at the contours on the front 9, they do look a little hard. Like 3 is an easy pin. 3 is down in the low area. There's going to be a lot of birdies to that relatively short par 4, but you do have some ones that are a little bit trickier. The one that I'm the most curious about is going to be hole number 5. That is a par 3, by the way. That pin, if they played it tipped out, would be about a 200-yard shot. And you can see with the angle over that bunker, there's not a lot of room to work with over there at hole number 5. So it is a tougher pin, but I would say that a pin like you have there at 5, there's a really good chance that they shorten up the tee box there. And, if they shorten up the tee box rather than playing it at 200 yards, hole 5 may actually get easier than what you had for the first few days. Like hole 9, for example, that pin location is just on top of a slope. A lot of times what they'll do with that kind of pin location is they'll move up the tee box to make it a wedge shot, to make it about controlling your spin. Because if you land it about hole high, right, if it's on top of a slope like this, you don't control your spin, you're going to spin down to that bottom tier of the green. So I could see them moving up a few of those tee boxes. If they do, holes like 5 and 9, those par 3s, and I thought were going to be a little bit harder, could actually play to a lower scoring average. And if that's the case, you could see even better than a -2 scoring average. So I try to be conservative when it comes to giving you guys these projections, but with the cut line, with it being moving day, I think it's pretty safe to assume that in general, scoring is going to get a little bit better. And you're already talking about a leaderboard that is absolutely full of low rounds. Your leader is -16 through the first few days, a bunch of guys that are up there at -9, -10 or better. Scoring might even be even crazier out there for tomorrow. So we'll get back to these shots gained metrics when we go through the board, but I've already got my eye on a few props. So we're going to go through those right off the bat. And then, any of the questions or deep dives that you guys want to do. You assuming that I'm not playing Putt Guider tomorrow knowing my strategy, but do I think he wins? Yeah, so I have a bunch of mains that I have the outright bet. I'm going to be taking a stance against him over there for Showdown. And part of that is a self-hedge, but also the fact that he gained 5 strokes with the putter. So yeah, you'd be right guessing that I'm not using him for tomorrow, Noah. But do I think he still wins? I think there's a chance he does. He's by far the favorite right now, so we'll have to see how it shakes out. Who are we parlaying for live for a Magical Kenya Open? Oh, I haven't seen that leaderboard at all, Terry, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. But if you need somebody over here from the PGA Tour side, I've got you, Terry. And we're not going to go with chalk like a Putt Guider. We can go with somebody a little bit further down the board. But let me know, clarify down there in chat if that's what you were looking for. Audi Potts is a rocket ship. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's going to be around for a while. You can tell that he's talented, and one of the more fun to watch skill sets that you have on tour. Like, he reminds me of a Bryson a little bit. Right? He's hitting the ball further than anyone that we've seen, and he's unlocking parts of golf that we haven't seen for quite some time. Like, he lost strokes off the tee today, right? Despite hitting the ball like 340 yards, yet he gained a shit ton of strokes on approach. And I know that the stats can be kind of wonky, and I think that's kind of what's going on there. There's no way that he's losing strokes to the field, right? Hitting the ball as far as he is. But I think because of how easy the iron shots are that he's setting up, that it looks like it's the approach play that's kind of carrying him. But I think a lot of it has to do with the driver with Putt Guider. Let's go through a few slips or a few props I've already entered. So the first one I got to was an under on Harry Hall strokes, which it looks like that one may have actually been ripped off the board, which if that's the case and it happened that quickly, that's pretty sad. And that looks like that's exactly what ended up happening. Let me refresh the board and see if they have that reposted, because if they did indeed take that off that quickly, that's got to be a new record, because I entered it literally just minutes before we got on the live stream here. And yeah, as you can see, they still don't have that on the board. So we'll, I guess, make an audible, go through a detour out here with a few different props. The other one I paired it up with was this EVR under on strokes. And EVR is in the first group off of hole number 10. So if we go back to the tee times over here, you'll see that that's the case. Going off with a Fred Biondi and a Ricky Castillo, which if we go back to the weather from before, I think the earlier your tee time, the better out there for round number 3. So that was part of the reason that I got to an EVR under, but also his elite tier course history. He's got a lot of top finishes around this event, was first round leader last year, was near first round leader the year before that over there at the same golf course. So at 69 strokes, he does bring that push equity to the table. Harry Hall, by the way, was at 68.5 strokes. So that was an under that I was looking at. Neither of these, by the way, posted over there on Sportsbook. So it's not even like we could compare a line over there on Draftkings Fanduel that that sort of thing. But if you take a look at some of the comparable players to a Harry Hall, like Rasmus, minus 150 under, a Patrick Rogers, right, minus 145 for the under, even guys like let me find like a lower tier player. Like, I hate to say that Aaron Ride be like lower tier than what you have with Harry Hall, but he technically is. Like, we take a look at the shots gained over the last few months, and he's even minus 125 over there for the under. So that was kind of the idea with Harry Hall. We didn't have the exact line for comparison. Another prop I was looking at, though, was this over on Alex Smalley Green. So I haven't been able to enter this prop myself. In fact, I'm probably going to try and find another prop here on live stream to go out there and pair up with this Alex Smalley prop. But these two combined with that Harry Hall prop, which who knows, maybe they'll end up adding that back to the board at some point, were props that I was looking at already. So I already mentioned the EVR one. Alex Smalley, just to go through this, if we have the 2024 green regulation percentage up. So this is from last season. And the reason for that is we don't have enough rounds here in 2025 to make it a really good sample size. Last year, though, Alex Smalley numbered 19 on the whole PGA Tour when it comes to hitting greens regulation. So with the average at about 12.3 per round, that was before the cut line, right? You had a lot of lower tier players that were bringing that down. So I would say that's going to be at least about 12.5 per round. Yeah, on top of that, you have an elite tier iron player in Smalley who was top 20 on all the PGA Tour last year, right? In this field, top 5 of the players that went out there and made the cut. And if you take a look at his stats so far this week, what you'll see with Alex Smalley is that he's gaining off the tee. He's gaining over there with his approach play. That was just in round number 2. In round 1, it was the exact same stuff, right? Was hitting a bunch of fairways, also going out there and gaining with his approach, which is why I'm comfortable with this over, which, by the way, his green regulation from round number 1, I believe he hit 14 of the 18. Round number 2, he hit 13 of the 18. So he went over in both of those performances. It just to show you the Eric Van Rooyen stats, that was part of the reason that I like him as well. Today, gained in the 2 ball striking categories, about half a stroke off the tee, a stroke over there in approach. Round number 1, he wasn't his best off the tee. So, kind of nice to see him figure that out there today, but he was able to go out there and game with his approach play and the putting. So the kind of stat profile that you'd say is relatively sustainable out there from day to day. And he also has a few decent finishes around the Mexico Open in the past. So that was the idea over there. So that's with those 2 props. And there's a chance they add that Harry Hall one back. I can't imagine that they bumped it within literally like 5 minutes of dropping a board. Like, that feels a little bit silly. If they add that back, you go over there and you could play it with Eric Van Rooyen as slip number 1. Slip number 2, we're going to find a pairing over here for Alex Smalley. So I'm just going to assume that they add that Harry Hall one back to the board. Let's try and find something to mix up with this. And I didn't quite have enough time to go through the board quite yet, but I'm sure we can find something here together to play. Do I know what the 6 of 6 percentage is? Went way up when it went from -4 to -3. And I don't know the exact number, but I know it's right about like 16% or so over there in most contests. What's going on? Jason says, what's up, man? Am I heading to any of the Florida swing events? Absolutely. I'll be there next week at the Cognizant the entire week. I'll be there Wednesday for a little bit, scouting the course, then Thursday through Sunday. If you're going to be there, I'll be at the Bear Trap the entire time. I have the hospitality upgraded there through my mom's work. So I get to go for free this week. It's kind of nice. And then I'm going to be at the Players Championship for the weekend. Undecided on API. I'll probably be at API for the weekend. Big time events like that, right? Signature fields. It's not that hard for me to want to go to those kind of events. The one that I'm 50-50 on is the one over in Tampa. What is it? The Valspar Championship. If Jordan Spieth and JT play, good chance I show up there too. But yeah, Jordan Spieth, by the way, just announced that he's playing the Cognizant this week. And there's not a happier person alive to see that than me. I'm super stoked to be able to follow my boy Jordan out there. But yeah, we got this over on Alex Smalley. Let's try and find someone to pair it up with. They didn't have these matchups up before, which matchups are never really my favorite bets to get to, but I do like to do my due diligence here, right? See what we actually have on the board. A Højgaard versus Piercy kind of stands out. Now, I know Piercy's no slouch when it comes to making birdies. He makes a lot more than you would probably expect, but Højgaard, just a much better player than what you have with Piercy. So that one at least kind of sticks out. These other ones, pretty 50-50, like especially this Højgaard versus Lawrence matchup. That's as close to a 50-50 coin flip as I could possibly say. If anything, I would actually say that the under on that matchup might make sense because Thurston makes a whole bunch of birdies. Aaron Rai versus Higgs, that's actually pretty close. I might even lean under on Harry Higgs because Harry Higgs does make a lot of birdies compared to his actual talent level. Jaeger versus Ramey. Ramey does make a lot of birdies, but Jaeger is in really good form. Yeah, I think the pricing's pretty good on those. So maybe let's stay away from that. In terms of your fairway board, they did have some props posted over here on Caesars. So just to show you what we have for comparison, Batia is about even money, hence why he's at 9.5 over there. But an Aaron Rye is minus 145 for the under. So if you're a believer in that plus EV value, like maybe you could take the under at that same sort of number. But let me see if they have either the Hoygaards or Harry Hall posted. I didn't think that they did. And yeah, no comparison over there on the Hogards or Harry Hall. But like a Jaeger is minus 185 for his over there on fairways. I just don't agree with that. And just to double check, let me see what Jaeger did for today. I know I mentioned yesterday that I didn't think that Jaeger was likely going to go over his 8.5. I have no idea how he played. He probably did. He shot -7, so he probably went over that kind of fairway line. But yeah, he hit 10 today, which is a lot better than what he's normally used to doing. But the same thing kind of applies. Even though these 8.5s would be like plus EV for the over, I don't know if I necessarily agree with it because the average is about 9 per round. Maybe it goes slightly up out there after the cut line, but most of these guys they have up here, like the Hoygaards in particular, they aren't accurate drivers. Like they spray the ball off the tee. They're much more about that distance than they are than keeping it in play. So I'm not sure if they're my favorite play. In fact, of any of these fairway props, like, I mean, if we're just looking at the odds and what we have available, the best one would be an Aaron Rye. But I will say with Aaron Rye, that guy does hit a ton of fairways out there on tour. You could take a look at the birdie board. They do have Jaeger over there at 5 birdies. Over here in Caesars, William Hill, they are the site that does have these birdie lines posted. He's at 5.5 and minus 145 under. So kind of makes sense that they'd have him at 5, right, with that juice that you have towards the under right there. But at 5, we do get that push equity if you were to take that kind of an over. But these guys at 4.5 in general are much lower tier players, which I actually think you could look for an under on some of these players if you're looking for a birdie line. Kind of surprising that like EVR is even over there at 5 birdies. Same thing with a Harry Hall. Like I wouldn't fade them at 5, but I'd say it's kind of surprising that they have them up that high, especially when you have players like Steven Jaeger at that same sort of number. So it's probably not going to be a prop that we take here together, but that would at least be one that I'd be considering. Let me refresh this. Let's see if they did, in fact, repost Harry Hall, because that'd be nice to be able to give you guys 2 full slips here together. If not, you're going to have to keep an eye out that for yourself after the fact. But let's see what we have on here. So, yeah, I don't see Harry Hall reposted quite yet. He was about in this spot on the board before. But looking at the bottom end here, you also got a Jake Knapp. He's got a relatively early tee time. Like, I guess that could be something to look at. Let me see what group he is. I think he's like one of the first 5 or 6 groups out, but let me confirm that. Maybe not. Actually, yeah, he just hardly made the cut. So is it going off a little bit later on because of that? Yeah, I'd rather take Harry Hall there at 68.5 than like a Jake Knapp because of the tee time. And I know it's not a big difference, but when you're trying to get value on these props and trying to squeeze out a 5 to 10% edge to become profitable long-term, those kind of things matter. And I know it doesn't seem like a big factor, but when you've been doing this as long as I have, you can see that difference in ROI. Like, I usually rate my plays ahead of time on my confidence level just for my own record keeping. And the ones that I have the utmost confidence in, like 8s, 9s on that scale, usually the first couple slips that I enter on any given slate, significantly higher hit rate than the last few props and slips that I end up entering. So that's always going to be the case, right? It should be the case long-term, right? Your first leans, the first props that you found as obvious values are usually the best ones to go out there and enter. And any ones that you're squeezing in after the fact, a lot of times won't have that same kind of value. Dang, man, good deal, living your best life out there. Yeah, it's nice to be able to go to the ones down here in Florida, right? They're relatively close by. The Airbnbs, I got to say, they're clutch when it comes to doing some of these trips because I booked them all last second. And Airbnb, if you wait till like the week of to go out there and book, you get like 50% off every single reservation out there. So I don't always get to pick the best place. It's fine. I'm only going to be there for like an hour or 2 every single day. But yeah, it makes it really doable. That's for sure. And then yeah, I'm going to the U.S. Open this year. That's going to be in Pittsburgh. I'm from Pittsburgh, so definitely going up there to Oakmont. And then I'm probably going to go to one other major. That's most likely going to be the PGA Championship. But if I can swing my way into the Masters, I'm not going to say no to that. And then the Open Championships on the table as well, because Royal Portrush, I've heard just incredible things about. One of the more scenic courses in the world from what I understand. Let's find a pairing for this. We already have the Alex Smalley one in there. My intuition right now would probably be to go to one of these strokes unders. I already told you guys that I think the scoring average is probably going to be about a -2. So these guys at 69 strokes are essentially at that field average. And if we wanted to go with a plus EV value, we could take this Celinda prop, which if you take a look at his line over here on Draftkings, he's -130 out there towards the under. Now, over here on Fanduel, I believe his line is a little bit more conservative. In fact, if we go over here, yeah, you'll see that he's only -120 out there in that direction. So not a true plus EV value, and he is a little bit of a lower tier player. But if we can find somebody I feel a little bit better about at 69 strokes, I think that'd be a really good combination. We already played Eric Van Rooyen, right? So we're not going to go back there. I guess Thurston Lawrence, he could at least be in consideration for this sort of spot. If Jake Knapp was 69, he'd for sure probably be the guy that we'd be going with here. But Jesper Svensson, with his kind of approach stats, his off the tee stats so far, he could be in consideration for this. We're just going to throw a few in here, right? Do some brainstorming and then narrow it down to the favorite prop that we can find. Yeah, these birdie lines, like the guys they have here at 4.5, like I do think the birdie average may go to like 4.75 per round. So, getting to 5 is only going to be like a quarter over that average. But you're talking about bottom of the barrel guys here, like a Kevin Royce, Stephen Fisk, like they're average to below average players. And I think average would be being very nice to those sort of players in terms of their talent level. So that's why I'm probably sticking away from most of those players. So yeah, let's make it one of these two. So if you're going to choose between the two, Thurston Lawrence, he had a much better round 2 than what he had in round 1. Round 1 lost 2 strokes in approach, also lost with a putter. Today did the exact opposite, right? He was into the positive in both of those categories. So this shots gained profile, at least today, was great. Exactly what we're looking for, but it is rather inconsistent from round to round. So let me see what we have with Svensson. I'm pretty sure he's played a lot more consistent golf. And yeah, you can see that round 2, he actually gained across all 4 stat categories. And then in round number 1, he gained to the 2 ball striking categories like we were looking for. So, Jesper Svensson's playing some really good golf. It's not just at this event. He did make the cut at Phoenix, gained a bunch of strokes over there with his ball striking. This is the kind of golf course where as long as you're not bleeding like 3-4 strokes on the greens, you're going to go out there and you're going to shoot something pretty low. And the difference compared to some of these recent golf courses is this is past Palm, right? It's a completely different type of grass than what you had over here on this West Coast. And you can see his bugaboo, especially over there at the Waste Management, was losing a bunch of strokes on those greens. So I think that this past Palm could be part of the reason why he's putting a lot better this week. So we're going to go with Jesper just because he's playing a little bit more consistent golf, I would say. I'm a little bit worried about Thurston when it comes to the fact that he lost so many in round number 1. Now, the tee time for Thurston is advantageous. He is going off the second group off of hole number 10. Let me see where Svenny is. I think he's a little bit later. So, yeah, he's going off at 12:14. So, yeah, because he's played a little bit better this week, he does have a little bit of a later tee time. Oh, it's a tough one for me. You know what? We're gonna stick to our guns, what I was saying before about trying to make sure that we can take the earlier player. Like if everything's even, right? I'd rather have the earlier player. Let's go with that out there for our slip for the stream. So obviously, Harry Hall, if that gets reposted, you should go over there and play it with Eric Van Rooyen. If they don't end up doing so, you could go out there and play this as a 3-man slip, right? Obviously, adding in that EVR prop. If you don't get the Harry Hall one posted, maybe you just pair him up over here with Svensson, right? And make that your other pair over there for the 2-man. But either way, those are definitely all props that I like. Over here in Underdog, they've just been copy and pasting the board. They did have some birdie or better props posted, so I will show you guys what that looks like over here. But what you'll see is that they're just huge multipliers on these. And, the multipliers that are like 1.1, 1.2x, they're on props that aren't that realistic for players to go out there and hit. So, like, for example, Rye at 5.5 birdies, like that's asking quite a bit for any player, especially like an Aaron Rye. And then they copy and pasted the rest of the board. And then let me see if they posted Harry Hall. Maybe they do have Harry Hall strokes up, unlike over there in Prize Picks. And look at that. So yeah, if you guys want to have the Harry Hall prop, you just do so over here on the Underdog side. Take them there at the 68.5 and use them with the Eric Van Rooyen. So let's find that one. I believe should also be at 69. So yeah, is that the same exact projection? You take that one over there. And then over here on this side, take this combination over there for 2-man. And hell, yeah, if you want to add in Jesper and make that a 3-man, by all means, right? Go out there and do what your heart desires out there with your exposure. Let's see. Deep Dive Taylor Moore, is the guy worth a single entry in Showdown? Ooh, single entry is tough. I was going to say, is he worth playing in DFS? Yes, because I'm using him in some lineups. The idea is that he's due for some regression. Round number 2, he didn't have his best stuff really in any one category, but the main thing I noticed here is that he lost 2.3 strokes to the putter. Round 1, he gained in the 2 short game category. So this is the kind of player that is extremely chaotic, I would say, as a extremely wide range of outcomes because the shots gained metrics are kind of all over the place. But he is a high upside play because if he flips the putter to even just what he did for round number 1, that's a 4-shot difference right there. And, let alone the upside if he goes out there and gains from tee to green. So single entry, the reason why I kind of flinched when you said that is depending on how much you're entering that for, depending on how much of your bankroll that is, you might not want to bring up all that kind of risk, but he is a high upside play. That's for damn sure. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the live stream. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here. As I mentioned before, I'm dealing with that flood and all that shit here. So I'm going to try and get to sleep early, get ahead of all of that out there tomorrow. But for all the slips that I'm entering, make sure to check out my Patreon page for all of that. Link in the description to go out there and join on there for everything I'm entering on Underdog and Prize Picks. But that's all I've got, guys. Appreciate you stopping by as usual. Smash the like button if you guys haven't already, and subscribe so you don't miss any of the content to come, including our round 4 live stream.